Thank you for the opportunity to present. I will speak about green paper development as the basis for climate change curriculum development. In 2021, Israel Ministry of Education made a decision to revise the curriculum to include climate change. In October 21, a few initiatives were set up. These are presented here and include, for example, the establishment of Teacher Professional Development Center at the Technion Israel Institute of Technology and various advisory groups. Additionally, the ministry published a tender for developing green paper as a basis for policy development. The paper needs to include recommendations based on systematic literature review. I applied and received the task. In June 2022, the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Environmental Protection jointly announced that climate change will be included in the curriculum as core topic across all K-12 year levels, beginning in September 22. The Green Paper Tender contract was signed in January 22. Following a series of meetings with the chief scientist, it was decided that the systematic literature review will cover the list of aspects that you can see on the screen. It was also decided that on 2 monthly basis, I will provide a summary of recommendations so these can feed into the ongoing work of the various committees involved in the project. Thus far, half of the work has been completed and submitted. The initial systematic literature review covered 109 publications, out of which 79 were gray literature, such as publications by UNESCO and the European Commission. In this presentation, I wish to briefly present a snapshot of a few findings that led to applicable recommendations. I will speak about terminological inconsistency, climate change associations with ESD, the epistemological association between conceptualizing climate change as multidisciplinary and the cross-curriculum application, the behavioral modification approach, individuation messaging. The 21 terms associated with climate change. The media propagates the term climate crisis. However, crises usually come as a surprise and they tend to be temporary. Climate change is neither. What we are witnessing today did not come as a surprise. The disasters were projected repeatedly in models. Also, unlike crisis, climate change is not going away in the foreseen future. Many publications use the term climate science or climate literacy. However, climate science is the discipline of climatology. It strictly studies the climate. Climate change is much broader and studies human systems. The IPCC uses the term climate change when addressing this body of knowledge. Accordingly, the ministry now uses the term climate change consistently throughout its publications. I would like to mention here that they use the term ESD and sustainability education interchangeably. The analysis revealed that from an epistemological perspective, ESD may be defined as an agenda for addressing the world's main challenges. This implies perpetual conceptual inconsistency. This is because problems and challenges are always transitory. Accordingly, the various ESD perspectives and goals continuously change from one UNESCO publication to the next. No consistency was found even at the basic level of terminological stability. ESD knowledge appears as ephemeral, anecdotal, with no rules and concepts of organization. In contrast, over the past 100 years, climate change has evolved as an organized body of knowledge with rules for determining claims of truth and well-defined concepts and principles that govern the knowledge production. These basic concepts present relative stability over time. The absence of such governing rules and principles in ESD is not a minor issue. Rules determine truthfulness. That is, claims of truth are judged by the extent to which they adhere to the consensual principles of the field of knowledge. In the absence of rules, claims for truth cannot be refuted or verified, thus leading to a relativist worldview where under the ESD framework, all claims are equally valid. It follows that attempts to organize curricula around problems rather than around structured knowledge will meet insurmountable challenges in relation to all aspects of curriculum design. Consequently, it was recommended to dissociate climate change curriculum from ESD curriculum. The recommendation was accepted, and Principle 3 of the curriculum rationale reflects this understanding. The majority of climate change education publications seem to agree on one thing, that climate change is multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. I will use here the general term multidisciplinary. While the epistemological descriptor, multidisciplinary, conveys the idea that the knowledge is derived from multiple sources, it is not helpful in addressing the epistemological question of what climate change is. Furthermore, the epistemological descriptor forms hindrance for effective climate change curriculum development in two ways. First, by giving a false impression that we have characterized the body of knowledge where in effect we have not. Secondly, by providing a conceptual springboard for the misinformed conclusion, assuming that if climate change is multidisciplinary, then it follows that climate change needs to be taught in multiple subjects. Concerning the first hindrance, in my view, characterizing knowledge of any sort, be it a concept, an idea, or a discipline, as multidisciplinary is epistemologically lacking. This is because most knowledge created by humans may be characterized as multidisciplinary. Take, for example, a concept such as photosynthesis. At its narrowest, it involves physics, light energy, chemistry, light energy transforms into chemical energy, and biology, the transformation takes place in proteins. This idea may be stretched farther, for example, the role of green spaces in urban planning and architectural design. The same can be said for most disciplines. They are all multidisciplinary in essence. Ecology evolved from biology, chemistry, physics, and earth sciences. Geography involves sociology, climatology, urban planning, geology, and other sources of disciplinary knowledge. Psychology involves science and sociology, and so on it goes. Thus, referring to multidisciplinary as the sole descriptor of a body of knowledge is not helpful for advancing curriculum development. Furthermore, characterizing climate change as multidisciplinary is insufficient because it still leaves us with a question of what are the disciplines that make up the multidisciplinary knowledge. Obviously, if there are no disciplines, there is no multidisciplinarity. The second hindrance is of particular concern. Here it is assumed that if climate change is multidisciplinary, then it follows that climate change ought to be taught in multiple subjects. This conclusion seems to typify most curricular approaches. Unlike most other curricular multidisciplinary subjects such as history, civics, geography, science, and others, only climate change seems to have the unfortunate fate of being fragmented and dispersed across the curriculum in what is known as the cross-curriculum approach. The fragmentation and dispersal of climate change education across the curriculum poses a range of hindrances for effective teaching and learning. For a curriculum to be effective in achieving its educational goals, the structure of the curriculum must be intimately connected to the structure of knowledge and its acquisition. Knowledge acquisitions involved a change in long-term memory along with mechanisms for retrieving ideas from long-term memory. If nothing is altered in long-term memory, nothing has been learned. For knowledge to be processed effectively, it needs to be systematically structured and organized. There is overwhelming research and learning showing the importance of organizational structures for helping students progress to become experts. Thus far, no form of knowledge organization has been found to be more effective than disciplines in offering structured and organized knowledge. In a publication by Policy Exchange, a UK's leading think tank, Blake claims that a coherent curriculum program is rooted in the knowledge and discipline of the relevant academic subjects, where explicit reference is made to the research evidence in these areas. The dispersal of climate change contents across the curriculum violates this very basic principle of knowledge acquisition. The report proposed to develop climate change as an independent subject in the curriculum. However, this suggestion was not accepted by the NGOs and the other stakeholders. Consequently, a compromise was reached where climate change is taught as independent core topic in years 8 and year 10, and additionally through cross-curriculum approach across years K to 12. I would like to say a few words about the individuation approach. In this approach, the message to students is that they have personal responsibility concerning climate change. They need to change their behavior as a means for solving climate change. The perception referred to as individuation was criticized for serving the capitalist market by privatizing the need for climate change action and diverting the problem to the downstream symptoms rather than the upstream causes. Finally, I would like to present 4 clusters of associations that emerged from the analysis. These clusters describe the educational inputs in terms of knowledge and individuation messaging, and educational outputs in terms of student mindset and behavioral modification. We can think of 2 axes, one ranging between low individuation messaging to high messaging, and the other ranging between low input of climate change knowledge to high climate change knowledge. The system gives rise to 4 clusters of associations. In cluster 1, the association between high climate change knowledge and high individuation messaging gives rise to mindsets that may consist of pessimism, helplessness, powerlessness, apathy, anxiety, or depression, as well as low behavioral change outcomes. In cluster 2, the association between high climate change knowledge and low individuation messaging gives rise to what was described by Young as powerful knowledge and low behavioral change response. Powerful knowledge is described as quality education that prepares students for successful participation in adult life. This knowledge has intrinsic value on its own right as it holds society's best understandings of claims of truth. Biesta criticized learning outcomes that emphasize specified performance outcomes, claiming that instead of asking what the school should do for society, which seems to have become the most prominent way in which the task of the school is nowadays being conceived, I ask, meaning Biesta asks, what society should do for the school so that the school can be a school. In cluster 3, the association between low climate change knowledge and high individuation messaging gives rise to the development of naive optimism and relatively high behavioral change responses. In cluster 4, the association between low climate change knowledge and low individuation messaging gives rise to low behavioral change response and development of denial and skepticism. Also, there is more vulnerability to media misinformation. Overall, the findings reveal that the more people are knowledgeable about climate change, the less they are inclined to believe that their individual actions can make a difference, and the more they feel powerless. If the role of behavior is not to solve the climate change problem, then does behavior has any role at all to play in climate change education? Why teach behaviors such as refraining from using disposable products or walking to school if it makes no difference whatsoever in relation to the state of the climate? The proposed answer is because we as society believe that these behaviors are the right thing to do. These norms reflect the ethical relationships between humans and the earth, which we wish to instill in our children. Similar to the way we teach children not to bully each other, we need to teach students not to bully the earth by unnecessary consumption. Here, norms and ethics are perceived as having intrinsic value rather than being viewed as a means for ulterior goals. Thus, the role of behavior is to raise human beings who are respectful of the earth and express their respect by not trashing it and through other forms of respectful behavior. The dissociation of behaviors from its utilitarian goal eliminates many of the negative impacts of individuation, outlined above. Once behaviors are dissociated from saving the planet, students may be more inclined to perform environmental behaviors as they do so because it is the right thing to do, not as means to solve climate change.